Well. Where to start with that? Maybe with David Haye beating friend Joe Fournier and then calling out Tyson Fury. Or maybe with the sad sight of 58-year-old Evander Holyfield falling through the ropes and then being dropped and stopped by Vitor Belfort. Or maybe Anderson Silva sparking out Tito Ortiz inside a round. Or with Donald Trump, guest commentator, apparently using the occasion to start his campaign for 2024. Or maybe with the only real fight of the night, as John O'Carroll kept his world title ambitions alive. Or maybe we should just talk about Emma Raducanu instead. Either way, this is After the Bell. It is Mirror Fighters Boxing Show. I'm Martin Domin, joined by Barry Jones and by Declan Taylor. We will attempt to pick the bones of last night's Triller show. As I said, Evander Holyfield was stopped in the first round. I always think before these fights, I'm in two minds. One, something bad could happen. We could end up in hospital. It could be worse. Or, as we saw with Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., it could just be 8 or 6 really boring rounds. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief when we go home. Last night, it could have been the former. Thankfully, the fight was stopped inside 2 minutes. And no real harm was done physically. But I wonder, Barry, what this does for the sort of genre of legends coming back. Did it not go far enough that people still want to see more? Do Triller still want to do more? Or maybe are we starting to see the beginning of the end?
I think we've learned now with this in this modern world that you can sell anything. If you just keep beating the drum, it'll sell. And the more popular you are or famous you are, then the more chance you've got to sell it. And so it will continue. I think it will continue. And if it's a good fight, it helps them. If it's a bad fight, they just repackage another fight and go again. I think this is. I'm not saying here to stay. Well, it'll run its course, but it'll be a while. I feel because how would you? It's like don't hate the player, hate the game. It's one of those scenarios where Holyfield shouldn't do it. He embarrassed himself, and he did. An all-time legend of the sport who went on for too long, as a real boxer, and this one now against another guy who's probably past his sell by date. I don't know. The other guy boxed in a different obviously combat sport. Again, he looked so old and fragile, no balance, and he didn't get hurt. And there'd be no long-term effects on that because he didn't really take a decent punch. But like I said the other week, that's my worry that no one gets hurt and it continues. But these fighters have taken too much damage already in their careers, like we all have. But to be great, you have to risk that, and now to take it later in your life is going to be a potentially life-changing as you get older. But it doesn't matter to people who are organising these events because as long as it doesn't happen in the ring, it's irrelevant. And that's sort of boxing in the whole, really, any combat sport in the whole. As long as it doesn't happen while the event's going on, once you retire, that's none of our business. And that's how it is. But now they're old and how they come back. And I don't know if it's sanctioned. If it's you can't do nothing about it if it's just like a white collar fight, for instance. There's no sanctioning body to it. If that was the case last night, then you can't just stop it. But if any professional organization sanctioned any of those fights last night, except for the O'Carroll fight, then they shouldn't be allowed. They should be sued. They shouldn't be allowed to do it, including the Haye Fournier fight. Nothing wrong with them fighting. Nothing wrong with them earning money. People want to pay for it, and good luck to them. I can't blame them for being offered money and taking it. But if that goes down as a real fight, when it was clearly to anyone who had eyes, it wasn't a real fight. And I know Joe. I've known Joe since he was 17, 18. So I don't want to slag him off because I haven't seen him for years, but he's still sort of a friend of mine. And we were close back when he was younger. But I was like a mentor, to be honest. But and I don't want to slag it off. But how can you not? Like David clearly carried him, and that was just as damaging for the sport if that was a professional fight than the Holyfield thing for me. It is, David Haye's shouting off and wanting to fight, Tyson Fury, and you just think, what, like, the last, why? Like, I know why, because there's loads of money in it. And the thing is, because boxing is, is such a dirty business, it will be, that fight has a realistic chance of happening. Like, in no other sport on the planet would that happen. But in boxing, that's a realistic fight to happen, and he knows it. And now we're talking about it now, and all the media streams every platform who shows boxing will be mentioning that on their web pages and their news reels, and it'll be all out there, and it'll grow interest. And all it takes for Tyson Fury to say he's a bum, I'll batter him, and that ignites it. And then whatever happens, you don't need to fight Joshua then. He got one of the biggest names in British boxing in the last 15, 20 years to fight. And that's where boxing kicks itself in the backside.
Well, you said it last night, Declan, on Twitter, you would watch it. And of course people would watch it. We should have seen this fight, of course, 8 years ago before Haye pulled out twice. But, and listen, Barry's right about last night's fight with Fournier. But again, listen, 8 rounds, 16 minutes. If they're getting anywhere near as much money as they said they were getting, listen, fair play. I mean, if someone offered it, I'd fight you for a few mil. Let's be honest.
I regret it, mate.
You still got that sparring video?
Yeah.
He might. I tell you what, we certainly would watching it.
But David Haye, the real David Haye, 3 years ago against Tony Bellew, fell apart physically, looked terrible. Surely we don't see that fight.
No, I mean, when I said I'd watch it, it's very much tongue in cheek. The whole point of that whole show is that people would watch it. People do watch it, and that's sort of like the barometer now. That's the measuring stick of anything, isn't it? It's like, well, if someone's going to pay for it, then we should put it on. But like, all you got to think is what's going to make more money on pay-per-view in this country than out of Tyson Fury against Tom Schwartz or Tyson Fury against David Haye. Like, it's not even a a fight between those two. It's sad, but it's a sad indictment of where we're at. And it's a sad indictment of, it goes back to what we were saying about people fighting in not regularly, that you sort of think, well, if he's going to fight those 5 names that he said in that interview he did, with the 2 Joshua fights, Dillian Whyte, you think, oh, sweet, that's a good run. I'd love to see that with Wilder, Whyte, 2 Joshua fights, and then he was talking about Chisora, but whatever. But it ain't going to happen. It's not going to be those 5. There's every chance that everything falls out of bed and then he's not fighting anyone. You're just watching him on Instagram doing, I don't know, shout outs for people. So you sort of think, well, if it's that or David Haye, then I'd watch the David Haye fight. And to be honest, I would watch. I'd work it because it would make money. Like Barry said, it would generate money. And it's part. And do you know what? That was a real realization last night as I sat up watching that and paying for it on Fight TV out of intrigue and almost like I felt like duty bound to do it. A lot of the time I do with these fights. You feel like it's a duty to watch it because of my job and whatever else. But I felt like I was part of the problem last night. Yeah, sitting there watching it, paying the money, and whether you agree with it or not, it's just like a circus, isn't it? A lot of people went to the circus not because they were like, I love this. It was like, well, what is this? What's happening here? Like, why has that woman got a beard? Or is the lion going to eat the bloke with the stick? Like, that was sort of what I was, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't be part of it anymore. I can't sit there paying money. It was so horrific last night. It just felt like, I don't know. They're obviously going for something, a sort of atmosphere, but the whole thing just felt rancid and sort of. They're standing there and nobody. Like we've all seen the videos of Holyfield last week doing the pads and whatever else, and we all know why this is a problem. And no one really mentioned it because they all know that they can't because they're working for the show. They can't. Like Sean Porter must have known. He sat, so they can't mention it really. No one can mention it. They're all picking Holyfield to win. And I don't know whether that was done last week before they saw the videos. It was like, this is absolutely crazy. But, go back to the original point on Haye and Fury, it's not quite as elaborate as that, but it still is. And David Haye knows that. He's the ultimate, some might call him con man, I would call him salesman. And it was another absolute sale of the century last night. And if he gets a Tyson Fury fight, given what happened to him against Tony Bellew twice, it would be one of the biggest results for any salesman, bigger than any Eddie Hearn deal. It would be a boxing salesman masterclass, and you almost have to admire it.
You have to admire it. You do, and again, if someone's offering you money, and listen, David's earned a lot of money, but there's always more to be earned, just hard to turn down. It's the same with Holyfield. He's spent a lot of his money. He's still probably got a lot of money, but again, whatever they offer you, enough's enough, isn't it? I mean, never enough. But honestly, with the David Haye thing is, I think he counts on the Bellew fights. To be honest, I think he knew he wasn't right, and that looked fabricated in many ways. That certainly the return, but whatever it was what it was. But now he's going to come back and sell it, and he sold that, and he sold that like a real fight last night, by the way, and he's going to sell the Fury fight when he knows as soon as he gets clipped, his arm's going to go, or whatever's going to happen. He's never going to beat him in a million years. And how can you take him seriously as a pundit, as whatever he does after that? How can you? That's the problem. I think, since Big Brother, I blame Big Brother, like 20 or 25 years, whenever it started, that's when the problem started. And we realised then we will watch anything. And the more curious the situation, then the more we want to watch it, the more the peeking behind the curtain scenario. I wonder what's happening there. And that's where we're at. And I didn't think it would seep into sports. And it sort of hasn't, but it's seeped into boxing. Because, again, boxing is the garbage tin of all sports. As much as I love it, as much as it saves so many lives. It's a Friday night, Sam Egginton boxed a French guy in a 12-round war, which I was ringside, and it was a pleasure to be there. Honestly, God, it was an honour. I called the fight, the channel fight. It was an honour just to be there. It was just so tough and hard. No, that's real. And they didn't get... They were probably cornermen, I call them cornermen, on that show last night. We probably got paid more than they got. And that's where in what realm of reality should that be right? It's just crazy. That's real fighting that everyone should want to see, but they all want to see celebrities dancing on each other. And again, I got no issue with them doing it. Like, I got no issue with soccer aids and all that. It's all really good stuff. And but don't call it what it is. Make it what it is. That's all I keep saying all the time. But it's not. And if Joe Fournier and David Haye was a real fight, I don't know if it was sanctioned. Was it sanctioned? I'm not sure.
I think it was, then it wasn't, then I don't know. It's not on BoxRec, neither is Evander Holyfield, but Florida definitely seemed to be keen to do it.
If you could gamble on that fight, which I suppose you could if you could put bets on that fight, then that borders on fraud. Because no way was that. No, they both knew what was going to happen. I can't have it any other way. And Joe, if Joe sees this, he'll never speak to me again, and all the rest of it, but it is what it is. I can't see how that was a real fight. And I know I've sparred with people who are not good enough for me, and I know I need David Haye's, and I can make people look competitive. Floyd Mayweather did with Conor McGregor. That was exactly the same thing. Another thing which bordered on fraud for me, because they knew what was going to happen there. They might not know the wrong, he was going to finish him, but they knew he was going to play with him and drag him late to make it look entertaining. And that's true, and it's true. The same as McGregor could do with Mayweather if it was the other sport. As well, he could have done what he wanted anytime he wanted to do it. And that was the same last night. Haye didn't throw a right hand. Now he's saying he didn't want to show Tyson Fury, the Haymaker. He wanted to make his mate look a little bit good, and maybe they all bet on going to the points, which was probably the biggest odds, maybe, except for Joe winning. And obviously, Haye's not going to let Joe Fournier beat him, because that would be catastrophic. But it was just such a make-believe fight that it was a sparring session. So if you can bet on a sparring session, all these people who bought into it just had their money stolen. Exactly, they did, didn't they? I can't see how you can see it any other way. And then surely that can't be legal. I don't know. I don't gamble, so I certainly don't gamble on that stuff. But that's how it is. And I would have watched it if we weren't covering it today on this podcast. And that's not me standing my ground. I just that's not. It's not. I said this the other week. Those fights are not. They're not targeted for me. So why should I watch them? Good luck to them. Okay, but they're not targeted to me. I miss out on John O'Carroll, of course, because it's caught on that bill. But, that's just a casualty of it. But I wouldn't. That's not targeted for my demographic, so I don't watch it. But I had to, because we were going to talk about it today. That was the only reason. So Martin, it's your fault. Thank you.
Yeah, it's your fault.
Well, I was going to say, it is a fair point, because you mentioned Sam Egginton on Friday night, and we didn't come on yesterday and talk about that, because again, our audience is different. So then we come on and talk about Evander Holyfield, and we already know what we're going to say. We're going to complain about it, essentially. We're also going to say, for some people, not for others, the same as we do with Jake Paul. So maybe we just shouldn't bother. But then it is a big talking point in boxing this week.
Yeah, that was the whole problem.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was the problem with Jake Paul, though, wasn't it? There was nothing else on that weekend. I mean, you're right. There was an amazing fight on Friday night that we could have spoken about, but it's like we're just like every other news outlet that everyone feeds into the same thing. It's just like and we kind of got to do it. And if we don't, I mean, if we don't, that's a good principled stand on it. But the fact was there was a show last night. But then when you just peep, like you sort of scratch the surface a little bit, like all the fights were 2-minute rounds. It was like Haye Fournier was 8-2s, and then Holyfield, thank God. I mean, it didn't last one round, but it was almost just they just making it up. And the problem we've got, and Matt Christie tweeted it, the editor of Boxing News, something like he hit a nail on the head. It was like the boxing it's unable to arm itself against this. It's not boxing's fault necessarily, but the fact is that boxing cannot defend itself against this. Like, it was sanctioned, commissioned. There was people betting on it. There were former world champions commentating on it. You had, it looked like a show, and it was just like Jake Paul. It's all the makings of an actual show, but then it's just not. And you sort of think, where does it end? And
boxing opened the door, mate.
Yeah,
boxing,
I'm not
with McGregor and Mayweather. Boxing opened the door for all this. These fights would have happened anyway. Triller might have just gone on anyway, but it wouldn't have been. And he might have had ex-boxers. Now it would have been an issue, but it wouldn't have really been boxing's issue because you'd be separated from it. We don't sanction these fights. We're not involved in these fights. But then they have real fights on the bill. So again, so they are involved now. They are to blame. But they opened the door. And no, listen, we all got to make a living. That's what we're talking about now, of course. No, I'm not a rich enough man to have that many morals anymore. But they opened the door to it by allowing that huge fight against so much money he's had to turn down. But people who love the sport, it don't help the sport. It's a short-term gain which makes a longer-term problem. I feel this might be this generation now might be if boxing is no longer going on in 25, 30 years time, we would have pointed back to the proliferation of titles and how easy to get and if you're the right guy, we used to moan about that, didn't we? That used to be the biggest issue for boxing. You only get a title shot if you sign with the right promoter. You don't need to win. You don't need to beat anyone world class, get a world title fight, more world titles in each weight. But now we don't care about that anymore. We're on about this stuff. But this might be the generation that if boxing does extinguish itself in years to come, this will be the point we look back at and go, this is where it really, really hit rock bottom, and we couldn't climb back out of it.
But I do think this as well is a symptom of what you've just spoken about, in the proliferation of titles and the fact that the best don't fight the best, like we had in the tennis, where Raducanu emerged as the best because she beat everyone. There was no dodging anyone. You have a pathway and you beat them all. Because we don't have that in boxing, normal boxing fans just crave it. As in, no, not normal boxing fans, normal sports fans. The amount of people who always say to me, why does this not happen? Why are they not actually fighting? Why can they not make it happen? And they just lose interest in boxing because of that. So then boxing has to do something else, or this sort of freak show then becomes appealing to people. So I do think this is a symptom of that, and it's just the next step on it. And you're right, I'm not really qualified to say this is the lowest point of boxing, and but it feels like a moment. This does, and Jake Paul does, and just where we are now, and that there's barely anything in the books. There's a couple of fights that you can hang your hat on and be like, I'm looking forward to that. It feels like a bit of a nadir. And you're right. Where does that end? Who turns that around? I don't know. I really don't know. It's kind of worrying, isn't it?
And by the way, I got an agent. Well, I don't need an agent. Why I need an agent? But I have one. He sent an email to Triller like ages ago, inquiring for work for me. So I'm the biggest hypocrite in the world because I'm slagging it off, but I would have worked it. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we moan and I bet you would have got paid well.
I bet it would have got a bit. I bet it would have been a good pay as well.
Well, yeah, of course, but they're not going to see who they end up seeing who they have. They're not going to have me, are they? Obviously, this is ridiculous, but but it was just worth an inquiry because it was work. And again, if I was a rich man, I wouldn't have done it, but I'm not. So like everyone else, you got to pay the mortgage, you got to earn a living, and that. So yeah, so I would have done it, I did. What's his name? Freddie Flintoff. Couldn't remember his name. I did the cricketer. I'm a golfer. I did the cricketer. So what am I to say? You know what I mean? I did it, but it was I worked for that station at the time, and that was the fight in front of me. And I tried to call it as seriously as I could, but I also didn't sort of package it up as this is a Hall of Fame, or this is the start of a real journey of a boxer. It was what it was, and you just treat it as a novice. So, but I would have worked it last night. And if they were on the flight, they would have flown me to Miami, and that's the truth. It is. I said to a producer once, and I won't go into it too much, but about somebody, like, we were having a meeting, and I said, listen, it was an issue with some commentary, and I said, listen, I'll say whatever you want me to say. This is true. And no one ever, to be fair, I have to say, no one's ever asked me to say anything in commentary. For any channel I've worked for, no producer or anyone's asked me to say anything other than what you think you see, what's going on. And I'd say that. And I think that's throughout the board anyway. I don't think anyone ever gets told what to say. But there was an issue with some commentary on a fight before where I didn't back the home fighter as much as maybe they thought I should. And I said, listen, ultimately, I'll say whatever you ask, whatever you tell me to say. It'll break my. I said it'll kill me inside. It'll break my soul. I'll be gutted, but I need the job. Do you know what I mean? I know if there was a fear there that they were going to get rid of me, and I need the job. So I can't be more honest than that. I need the job. It'll kill me inside. But if that's what you say, I'll do it, and I'll be devastated. And I'll hide away from the world. But I need to pay. I got family. I got to pay what I got to pay. So and believe it, they went, no, don't be. No, you do what you think is right. That was the last part I did for him. But anyway, it was no, they genuinely meant that. I'm not slagging anyone off. They genuinely meant that. They didn't know, don't be silly. It was just, they just wanted to, obviously the promoter probably had to go with them, and that's what it was. But again, people will do what people will do for money. It's not always about being greedy, it's about necessity. Evander Holyfield, he might have loads of money, but he got 13 kids with 6 women. And that's bad in any country, but in America, the way they do their alimony and stuff like that. I know he's just fighting. All that probably went on all his family just to feed them. So, but the people who run the sport, they have a duty of care, or should have a duty of care, not just for the boxers, for the health of the sport. But it doesn't happen.
At least at the moment, anyway, we do have in 2 weeks' time Anthony Joshua, and then in 2 weeks after that, it should be Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury. But a lot of people doubt whether that fight will happen, and that's part of the problem, isn't it? I mean, maybe it will. It's only 4 weeks away. It seems to be happening. I don't know how many tickets have been sold. I don't imagine particularly many, but hopefully we at least have 2 excellent heavyweight fights to talk about in the coming weeks.
Well, and then we've got Canelo as well.
True.
So it's not, And if you look back at because I was thinking about it last night, if you look back at this year, it's been okay, really, considering this COVID. And we do sort of forget that a lot of stuff's been blown out of the water by COVID. But it just, last night felt like a real stinker for the sport and for everyone involved. And I've got to include myself in that because I paid the money for it. And I don't, there's a lot of boxing that I don't pay for or stay up for that happens that I did last night, and it's just. Yeah, not good. Do you know what is weird? Well, I'm sure we're going to get onto it, but the fact that Andy Vences against John O'Carroll landed on that card, it's just sort of kind of a bit weird. It's just a bit like, what's happening here? 10 rounder, and it was great. It was fun. It was a real good, fun fight, and it was like, yes, I want to watch this because it's, the 4 fights on the card. It was the only boxing match, and it was good fun. It was good fun. And you just think, how did this get picked up?
I bet you that was the fight when everyone went to get a drink.
100%.
Yeah. It's an intermission. Oh, this is not a real fight. Wait, let's go see the 2 YouTubers or whatever. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? But when is O'Carroll he's never in an adult fight? I mean, I covered quite a lot of his earlier career on Box Nation, and he's not the biggest of punchers, and that makes him more exciting because he's so aggressive, throws in combinations, a real busy buzz around you sort of fighter, and he's always going to be he's always value for money. Whatever the result of the fight, he's always value for money. He really is. But sometimes you got to try and get your wins and your losses. If we go and watch that, but I get to see what I saw Friday night. Like I went on Friday night from Coventry, 2 hours drive. So I got home about about 2:30. I couldn't go to sleep till 4 o'clock in the morning. I was buzzing from just watching that egg in the fight. I was just absolutely buzzing. It was just that was just like the toughest, hardest fight I've seen for such a long time. I can't remember the last time I seen a fight that was so tough. And it was just awe-inspiring. I'm a boxer myself. I've been in some decent fights. I've been punched around the ring more than most people. But that was one of those fights. I said in commentary, it was one of those fights where you love to watch, but you never want to be in. You know what I mean? You just love, you're like that. But I think, the thought of being in one of those would make me. I start playing badminton for a living instead. I wouldn't do it. It was just how they just could every round come out and just punch holes in each other like they did. And they did 11 and a half rounds of a real war of attrition, and then finished the last 30 seconds toe to toe on the ropes, like throwing bombs. It was just like, how can you do that? That's just superhuman stuff. And yeah, so if I can see that one, and I have to watch the other stuff, and I get one of those fights as a compliment, then I can live with that. Finish on a happy note.
Well, just on
John O'Carroll, so the whole thing that was eliminator or some sort of eliminator, and he's still going for a world title. He's had a sort of up and down career, but that was a big win. Like, Vence's a decent name, but then he's super feather. Who's the WBC champion there? Oscar Valdez. So again, like, it was just another grim moment for boxing. That whole thing, like, everyone can see what should happen there. Everyone in boxing, not involved in boxing, anyone with an iota of sense knows what should have happened there, and it didn't happen. And it's just another thing that happened, and that's real boxers, real boxing, real commissions, real drug testing, and it just failed. It just failed. And I don't care if there were caveats or whatever else. Like, if you tested positive for a drug, there should be some sanctions. You shouldn't be allowed to fight another man. Like, this is the most basic thing. How is boxing going to survive if that ethos sort of falls away? So then, even in that one good fight we had, an actual boxing fight last night, it was tainted a little bit because I'm thinking, okay, yeah, but Valdez is the champion here. But then in the WBO, you've got Herring and Stevenson, another great fight, another good fight. So it's like, it's just highs and lows always with the sport. And I don't know if John O'Carroll's good enough to win a world title. I'd love to believe he is, and I think there might be an opportunity somewhere for him. And he's one of those guys who deserves it. What an unbelievable story. Heartbreaking tragedy, and he's in there doing that. And it's just, that is what is inspiring about the sport. And so even in the, am I allowed to swear on this? Probably not. But even in the, the horror that we had last night across the board, there was like a shining example of what it's all about. And that was quite nice. And that was what I needed at whatever it was, 2 a.m. And to be fair, it wasn't a 5 a.m. job last night. And I'm so glad of that. So I've got to thank Triller for that.
Well, John O'Carroll is ranked fourth with the WBA. And they obviously, they have a couple of champions. Although the interim champion should be gone. So I think there's definitely an opportunity there. I mean, again, one of boxing's problems, but an opportunity for him. It was only a couple of fights ago that he lost to Maxie Hughes. So, as you say, something positive. I've just having a look at next week's schedule, and I think I've finally been able to draw the line. I think we won't do a show on former Game of Thrones star Thor Bjornsson.
I'm working now.
Oh, of course you are.
No, I'm working there. I forgot all about that. Oh, yeah. My partner problem. Hey, don't hate the player, hate the game.
He was supposed to be fighting Eddie Hall, which might have been, it would have been a freak show, obviously, but he's not anymore. Eddie Hall got injured. So he's now fighting.
Who's he fighting?
You tell me, Barry.
I have no clue,
A former arm wrestling champion, I believe. No joke.
Yeah, no, we can't do that.
But I don't think there's any real boxing on, unless I'm mistaken, which means the next time you see our three faces will be Anthony Joshua against Alexander Usyk. Does that not sound like a breath of fresh air?
I'll be there. Can't wait. Best stadium in the world, I reckon, that Spurs one.
You reckon?
Honestly, I've been to a lot of stadiums. I haven't been to that one. What was it? The one they had the Canelo fight. I haven't been there. That looks unbelievable.
AT&T.
Yeah, but the Tottenham one, in terms of England, it's better. It's nice. It's better than Wembley. That away end or the home end. Yeah, it's better than the Millennium. Looking a bit old now, mate. It's going to be, I mean, that is a proper fight. Like, a few of us spoke to Joshua this week, and it just sort of gets the juices flowing. That is proper.
Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed nothing happens in the next 2 weeks to knock that one out. We will be back then to talk about proper boxing. Until then, do take care.